philosopher who really helped to put the new emerging scientific conception of the world on secure philosophical foundations was René Descartes. The start of the 17th century was a time of enormous intellectual ferment. The development of the heliocentric, or sun-centred, conception of the cosmos was about as profound an intellectual shift as could be imagined. Humanity was effectively about to be demoted from centre stage location in the universe. Moreover, something which had seemed unquestionably true had turned out to be false. The Earth is not the centre of it all. And this raised a deep problem about knowledge, or what philosophers sometimes call an epistemological problem, epistemology being the branch of philosophy that deals with the limits of knowledge. If we could be wrong about something as central as the location of the Earth in space, if we could be wrong about that, perhaps we could be wrong about everything. And so the early 17th century was a time when sceptical questioning came to the fore again in philosophy. Philosophical skepticism gained further credibility from the rediscovery of the writings of an ancient skeptic called Sextus Empiricus, a philosopher whose writings deeply influenced the French philosopher Montaigne, who in turn challenged Descartes. So Descartes, living at this time of intellectual crisis, felt that he needed a new philosophical system, one in which he could prove with absolute certainty that the world existed, that God existed, and that we have immortal souls. He wanted knowledge, but he wanted certainty, complete, pure, certain knowledge where there was no shred of possibility of error. To achieve this goal, he set himself the task of engaging on a series of meditations. In his first meditation, he describes himself sitting by the fire with a book in his hand. And then he stops and wonders, do I really know this? Is it true that I'm sitting by the fire with a book in my hand? Is it not possible, for example, that I'm dreaming that I'm in this position? Descartes had himself suffered from particularly vivid dreams in which it had seemed to him that he'd been sitting by the fire, perhaps with a book in his hand. How did he know that this wasn't the case at the moment that he was asking himself this question? Perhaps it was all part of a dream. This argument makes it seem doubtful that we know what the world around us is really like. But nonetheless, it doesn't totally call into question that there is such a world. After all, as Descartes noted, the ideas in our dreams have to come from somewhere. But he then invents an argument which challenges the very notion that there is a world around him. He imagines a creature called an evil demon, an evil genie, whose whole purpose in life is to deceive Descartes as much as possible. Could such a creature not deceive him into thinking that the world existed as a physical reality, when in fact it was nothing but the demon and Descartes' soul, and the demon was planting ideas directly into his soul? If this was a possibility, how could he ever be absolutely certain that the world really existed? Come to it, if there was an evil demon who was determined to deceive him about things, could he be certain of anything? Perhaps even simple mathematical truths. Perhaps 2 + 2 = 4 was wrong. Perhaps it was just that the evil demon had deceived him into believing that. So it would seem as though, on the basis of his evil demon argument, Descartes is led to the conclusion that everything is doubtful and nothing is certain. The quest for certain knowledge is bound to fail. Well, it's at this point that Descartes makes a profound discovery, which was to provide him with the building block for his entire philosophical system. For he realised that there was one thing about which he could not be deceived, and that was that so long as he was thinking, he must exist. Even for him to be subject to a deception by an evil demon, he still had to exist, for who was that was being deceived? This is expressed in the famous sentence, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. Descartes took this as an absolute certainty and thought that it provided him with a bedrock from which he could rebuild the entire system of knowledge, the entire system of philosophical and scientific understanding. Now, how Descartes goes about that rebuilding task is an interesting question which we won't pursue further here. You can probably already see the difficulty that he faces, because if he's considered the possibility of an evil demon deceiving him, how can he ever really be certain about anything? He needs a sort of bridge to take him out of doubt and back into certainty. But what could provide such a bridge? Well, Descartes thought he had an answer, and his answer was God. A perfect God would not deceive him. If such a being exists, he thought, then at least those ideas that he can clearly and distinctly conceive of must be true, because God provides a kind of guarantee that if Descartes thinks clearly and tries his best, God won't let him be radically deceived. But of course you can see the difficulty. This only works as an argument if Descartes can prove the existence of God in the first place, and prove that God is perfect and wouldn't be a deceiver. And that's going to be very difficult to do indeed, given that he isn't allowed to assume anything that's not absolutely certain. So it's fair to say that subsequent philosophers were intrigued by the problem which Descartes had set for himself, the problem of knowing, providing certain foundations for knowledge. But they weren't persuaded by his solution. And in a way there was an irony here, because Descartes hoped to establish scientific and philosophical knowledge on very secure, certain foundations. But given the failure of his attempts to prove the existence of the physical world, or the immortal soul, or the existence of God, his legacy to philosophy was really one of doubt. He put centre stage the problem of knowledge. How do we really know? How do we really know that there's a world around us and that we aren't subject to some sort of deception? How do we really know that there's anything outside our own minds? These were questions which some of the most influential philosophers of the late 17th and early 18th century pondered in their quest to provide an answer to Descartes' question, what knowledge is and whether it can ever be absolutely certain.